Hello. There we go. Welcome back to another Lead Scoring Monday. The past couple weeks, I've been joined by my friends Chris Carolyn and Riley Powell, and we've been unpacking kind of what lead scoring should look like. And last week, Riley, you asked how we should actually build a good scoring model, a scoring model that doesn't cause tension between sales and marketing teams, that actually reflects the human experience of interacting with a brand. So today we're going to pull some engagement up inside of HubSpot and start looking at where we would build this out. How are you guys doing today, Chris and Riley?
Doing great.
Yeah,
Chris,
good.
Chris has been on lives all day.
Yeah, it's a great content day. So, yeah, it's been good.
Cool. Well, before we jump too far in, I do want to touch on the value path stages, as this is kind of the base of the ideal scoring model that we're kind of looking at here. And Chris, you've kind of suggested that we replace life cycle stages with the value path stages that you've outlined. And then I know, Riley, you have some hesitations on like ripping out the infrastructure that we all know in life cycle stages. So there's a little bit of push and pull there.
Yeah, replace first, replicate, I guess is kind of where I'm at.
Yes. And Kathy, glad to have you here joining us all day. I'm just glad
the kind words, Kathy. Thank you.
I'm just glad you're not getting sick of our voices at this point.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I did ask Danielle at the end of our measurement show, but she's excited to dig into like the practical, like we've been going over value first measurement principles. They're very like, yeah, that would be cool if we could ever like commit to those things. Like not ever trying to control anything about the process. What does that actually look like in practice and in HubSpot? And can we actually get there?
Yeah.
We're going to be doing content like that. So I asked her, what's the first question that comes to mind if I said we're not going to have leads, MQLs, SQLs, the word lead is not going to be found anywhere. There's going to be lead status is not going to be a thing. Like, what is the first question that comes to mind? And she said, how are teams going to be structured, like in a way that can actually like support that, right? And I think I hope that we can start to uncover that today, because there's a lot of change. It's not that we're not caring about any of the data, like we're just waiting for deals to come in and then we start tracking data. There's a lot of stuff that we want to capture still, but the situation changes. And like, so as an example, the people that were responsible for the content downloads and making the form fills like right and reporting on that, like all that starts to shift a little bit. So hopefully we continue the journey here so that we can create those spaces and that understanding so that it's, at the end of the day, value first is about trying to change things that most people know are broken in some way. So I think I'm optimistic. I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
What do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of baggage to get there. Like, I think we can. There's just a lot of things that like I have to adjust my framing for, and then also just like how we get from like how I would say most CRMs operate right now to like where this is going to go. So I'm optimistic, but I just see a lot of landmines that I'm trying to like make sure I don't.
I like the baggage analogy better than the landmine analogy.
Okay. Baggage is.
We'll help everybody unpack that baggage.
Yeah. And to be fair, like part of it is, this is the leads, MQLs, SQLs, those are the terms people know. They mean something. Obviously, there's like distinctions between companies on like what an MQL really is, but like you can walk into most, executive offices and say, this month our MQL goal is 500, and that like means something. But I
But
know
it's not like universal. So to me, that's where like I agree that we need to probably change it to get a clearer definition to where if I said to 100 executives, we need to get 100 MQLs, there would be probably 80 different definitions at least for what those are. Maybe 100 different definitions of like exactly what that means. Where I think what this value first model is trying to get to is like that there would be maybe 2 at most different definitions. And that could just be like if you're an extremely different business type or something. But like that for the most part, everyone can clearly understand exactly what that means when they say 100 people moved into this stage. I was thinking about this over the last week, and the term life cycle stage, just I keep relating it back to like an actual life cycle. Like if I said 100 people became teenagers, everyone knows exactly, technically, literally what that meant. Where if, that's kind of where we're missing, and where we need to get to as like this industry standard, because it's effectively similar in terms of we're just creating labels for these kind of sections of where people are at in their progression of like interest with a brand, which is similar to like grouping people by their chronological age. But there's just different definitions everywhere for what it means to be in those stages.
Right. Yeah. And I'll share my screen now. But I think that's a great example of what we want it to be like. We always wanted it, like when we talk about revenue factories and like this linear process, right? Even the concept of life cycle stage. Like one time in your life, you will transition into the teenager stage.
Yep.
That will never happen more than once. And it makes sense to have this linear progression, right? What we've experienced is that when you want renewal, upsell, cross-sell, all these things that supposedly are easier to get from your customers, they re-enter, these stages. We enter these buying cycles. So it turns out to be very much not linear. And that's definitely a part of what we're trying to solve for. So this is the value path, the biggest blue things on the screen. I do believe we will get to a place where a lot of this will only be one agreed upon definition, because it's based on human buyers. It's never based on the business has decided that this is what researcher means to them. It's like literally we've made it possible. That's the part that we're trying to figure out, to say that this person has intent and they are researching the things that we want. That's the part that's different for each business, right? The we want part, the what's important to our business part is different, just in terms of which content we're serving up for them to do research on in this case. But the person is redoing research, like no matter which vertical they're in. So just as an example, and I'm starting to, as I introduce this to more clients, understanding, okay, this is high level, great, we can use words that that humanize the process. Okay, but and we have this data model here that can support understanding data throughout that journey. But why do we want to even simplify it in this way? That's where, and this is where it does reach a point where these standardized things, let's say, if we can't agree on what these mean as a business, right? So unified customer view, unified revenue view, unified business context, and unified business enablement. if we can't agree on these, that how important they are for the business, then a lot of the other stuff, like you just can't get to. So I'm starting to tie this in, and this is where you take a hard stance. Like if we agree that these are important goals for us to achieve as a business, and we agree that humanizing the process in this way is a good idea, and we agree on what these objects mean as far as what a deal is for, what we need contacts for, what we need companies for, then we cannot like waver as an organization. That's where I think the governance, if you can do it there, now you can create flexible processes related to, okay, if somebody wants to have a conversation via email, we can support that group of people, but there's a whole nother group of people that might only live on LinkedIn, and we're going to support them too. We don't have to make those work together, right? Where now, without this kind of umbrella in terms of getting to these places, you feel like you have to standardize there when it doesn't make, like, engagement on LinkedIn is much different than engagement, via email. So does it even make sense to put them on the same scoring spectrum? Right? So I would love for us to dig in today from a practical perspective on, let's say our audience is primarily on LinkedIn, and because we do content on LinkedIn, like Kathy, as an example, is engaging with this content. What do we need to see in the CRM to say that, confirming she's at least in the audience stage? Like literally, this is how easy I want it to be for you folks. Like, she is an audience member of this show right now. So if we can't agree on that being a good thing, like, what are we doing with this content? Like the whole marketing strategy, right? Like, we need to be able to agree that there is no reason we cannot, see her as in audience stage at the very least.
So can you bring up the graphic again of all of them? Because I want to just like touch on the stages that are like that really we're talking about. So Kathy, she's here, so we should be able to identify her as audience at the very least. And then there's like what, Riley, I've said this to you before. You at one point told me that the purpose of lead scoring is to identify when we should deploy resources. I think that tends to be the researcher phase. Is that kind of signal is when we want to like proactively be doing something, whatever that something is. Hand raiser is, I think, the most straightforward, but still people get it wrong. But we want to know that. And then we go, that's where traditional lead scoring stops. There is an opportunity, and I work with companies who have deal scoring, so we are looking beyond the hand raiser at that point. But I do think that's where, traditional lead scoring stops when we get to the hand raiser. But maybe even just for today, I mean, we're already 20 minutes in. Maybe we look at,
I don't know. Like, again, so I've seen so many lead scoring things factor in things like number of open deals for lead score. I'm like, why is that even in there? Like, what are you trying to do with this then? You're like, just segment.
Right. Your relationship scoring.
Like to look at, like, I don't understand the point at that regard. So like, I think there's a vast array of way people are using lead scores.
Well, we know that for sure. Right. But I think there's a good way. There's a good way and a bad way to do all this stuff. And like, as you say that out loud, if somebody's having multiple conversations, with our business and is interested in doing business with us, this often happens when you build audience first and they just love you so much. They're like, okay, how can I pay you? Like, we got to find a fit here. Right. If it's open deals that are real, I mean, there's two sides that I think are both relevant. There's open conversations, like, yeah, value first. I'm interested in some AI training. I'm interested in scoping and planning for our organization. I could see us doing a scoring implementation. We know we need to do that too, right? That, like, the more that they're talking to us, like, now it's on us to say, okay, this is a higher value, relationship, because there's lots of opportunities to add value and create value, right? Or, and in that case, like, the conversations, there's active conversations being had, but even in terms of prospecting, if that's what our scoring is supporting, like, we can see organizations, right? Like, if we decide that agencies are a target, right? We know that they are dealing with a lot of these issues that we talk about, and there's lots of different ways they could solve for it. So are we clear as a business on all the different ways that we could, add value, right? That's often represented by the different revenue streams. So I think or again, it comes back to intention. But I do want to highlight, I think the challenge of all this is, like, as I mentioned before, I think hand raiser should be the spot where we are proactively, uh, you know, um, assigning resources to do, like, versus researcher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we were able to, this is where it gets very, like, in a perfect world, we could understand these things without asking them directly. Right. And a lot of that is the way that people talk about things on LinkedIn. Right. You can understand the words that they use and which posts they're interacting with, how they're engaging, whether they recognize they have a problem and they understand the solution. They're understanding their relationship and where they are even at, like, in their own journey. And they're aligned with how you want to solve for it, right? How you're suggesting it's solved for. If those three things happen and you create a path for that, then they raise their hand. That conversation sales wants 100 out of 100 times, right? Now, are we creating? This is where the score becomes less of a prospecting, an outbound engagement mechanism, and more of a, are we seeing things clearly? Like, are we giving them a chance to show us where they're at in the journey? And it's a marketing, more enablement understanding. Like, if we don't see anybody before they get to hand raiser, like, what can we do before that? And that's where I think, as we get in today and talk about social signals coming into HubSpot, like, that's going to be a big part of it, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we can hop over to HubSpot.
And really quick here.
Yeah.
I think there's, like, to me, when it comes into, like, building these scores, especially in terms of how they interact with some life cycle stage, value first stage model, there's kind of two different thoughts. I'm curious on which one we're kind of believe we were going here, where it seems like there's kind of audience, researcher, hand raiser that we're all thinking might be in some degree affected by scoring. And, like, you either are using, like, one score, like, for simple math, we'll just say, like, to 100, and then they overlay, like, some of the stage progressions across that. So, like, if you get to 40, you go from audience to researcher. If you get to 80, you go from researcher to hand raiser. Like, but there's a single score that progresses through 3 stages. And then, to me, there's, like, another idea or model that is each stage has a score. So audience has a 0 to 100. Once you hit 100, you move to the next stage, which has its own different scoring structure. That you move from 0 to 100. Once you reach 100 there, it moves into another third different scoring model. And this is predominantly for engagement scoring, I will say, not like fit scoring. Fit scoring in theory doesn't necessarily change as much, but I was just curious, do we have like a thought here in terms of how this interacts with the value first stages?
I don't have an answer. I have thoughts. I don't have answers.
That's what I'm here for.
So when I originally built engagement scoring months ago, I built it in 3 layers: low intent. It was a single score, but it was in 3 layers: low intent, medium intent, high intent. High intent has a max score of 60. Medium intent has a max of 30, and low intent has a max of 10. The point of this being that low intent plus medium intent does not equal high intent. High intent being a hand raiser. I could see building something similar to this, where your audience is your low intent, then they reach the medium intent activities, with the point being like, if we've seen a lot of low intent and a lot of medium intent activities, that might change the way we are trying to communicate with them, nurturing them along their path. So this is one option. The other option, like you said, is each of these having their own. The one piece that I'm a little that I'm thinking about is the audience. Like, there's nothing pre-audience. Sorry, Kathy, to use you, but you're here. So Kathy is in the audience stage because she's here, watching our content, engaging with us. Like, she's in our audience.
She's at least in the audience stage.
She's at least in the audience stage. But there's other people in the CRM that...
Well, so this is where it gets tricky to me too, because there's people in the CRM in audience. There's also people not in the CRM in audience. That
Right.
like we don't know, but in theory they are kind of in audience.
So there's a couple ambiguous definitions that you start to play with in terms of opportunity. Like the difference between a traditional customer that's going to buy the service you are selling and a partner who's also in the ecosystem that might represent a different kind of opportunity. Can we be okay with a world where they're both in our CRM and they start as audience? Because I think, like, if you put the word target in front of audience, does it make sense immediately as to
No.
who's in that group and why not?
Target audience, to me, target is like a subset of your audience. Audience is like everyone. And then once, this is just in my head, I could be wrong. Once you know enough information about them or what they're interested in, you can put them into some various target audiences of like, okay, we're going to target them for this because of certain things that they're doing, but they're still in audience. Like, again, this, Chris, goes to your point of like, there's the high level version of this, which is like you interacting with a brand, but then there's also within specific business lines or even thought lines, product lines of that brand, of like, where are you for lead scoring information versus where are you for ERP integration? Like, there are people that are coming in that are in your audience and are in researcher for like lead scoring that are not in that at all for like an ERP integration, that they're not even in your audience there. Like, you shouldn't even be talking to them about that because they're just not related to it. But like, this is where like how does it interplay at like the high level and then the down like high fidelity version?
Right. I think that's where you rely on other measures of the
Properties,
business.
absolutely. There
Right.
is no one property to rule them all.
Right. And so I hear, I'm treating audience like total addressable market.
Yeah.
Like if there's a contact that we've decided is in that total addressable market, they could be in our CRM labeled as audience. And that would satisfy the rules that we're talking about. And to put it really simply, and this is like, we've got to get to a way where we understand we have to serve the 95% of that market that is not in a buying cycle. And we want to interact with them in some way so that when they do get into the buying cycle, they know who the hell we are. Right.
Mhm.
So if it's total addressable market plus this 95% that are not buying, that's like whether it's 100 contacts or 10 million contacts, if they were all in the system as audience, that's allowed because they literally are in the audience.
Mhm.
Right. And if we bring them in that early, the whole point of what we're building out here is it gives us a better chance to say, oh, that person, like the earliest form of signal to one, like actively confirm, like, yep, I'm in the audience, I'm interacting in the space where you thought I was. Right. And then moving on from there, even probably like to the event of having a good place to like backfill, you know, data too.
I guess my only thing, and maybe this is what it's coming down to, is like, let's just say this is audience, just for like, do we care about the audience score? Like, it doesn't really matter. Everybody's that until they're a researcher.
Well, to me, even in the old model, like that very first stage is almost weeding out stage of trying to find people that became it that don't actually need to be it, either because it's some junk record, shout out to Clement for like Tesla, Elon at Tesla.com winds up in there. You're like, okay, Elon at Tesla is probably not in the audience. This is some junk record that someone filled out. Or, a lot of these CRMs have just become this kind of vacuous, pulling people in from all kinds of different things and being able to like use the audience to figure out like, okay, these people actually need to be in here and need to be served in some capacity, or like people that aren't fitting that don't. So audience, I'll equate it to the subscriber stage, and Chris, you let me know if this is the wrong way of thinking about it, where it's like the whole objective there is literally just viability and pulse check of like, is this a real person and are they doing things that are trackable? And if they are, great. And then the threshold to like become in this next stage is pretty low, as long as they are a live person and they are doing things that are trackable.
Like, I almost feel like the only point of having an audience score is just if you wanted to pool.
It's like a DQ score.
Yeah, or if you just wanted to see like, hey, are we like getting in front of people? Like you were
Yeah.
saying, Chris, like, I mean, I think like, are we at least making progress like with engagement at all? I don't know.
Yeah. Are we there to take the pulse?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. If it's a pulse check. Right. And I think that's where, again, I think traditional scoring is about, okay, when do we get to attack?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Versus if we create these, and I still think it just makes sense for audience and researcher because the difference is engagement and intention. Well, the difference is intent, right? And whether you can decide what that is. I think that's where all the conversations are. Like, what is the difference between low intent and medium intent? And are we, I don't know if you guys have done a lot of survey feedback work, right? How you ask those questions can greatly determine whether there's actually intent or not. You can kid yourself on how much intent there is based on the way that you asked the question, right? We can do content in the same way and say, oh, they watched this video. It's our favorite video, and we named it that way, so that must mean they had intent. Right? I think most of the strategic conversations are on that. But what I'm feel like we're getting to is that it's an internal pulse check of are we there, right? So if I knew, like, if Kathy's been in the CRM forever, and then and she's like all of a sudden shows up as hand raiser, we now have space to try and fill in the pieces of like, okay, why don't we have any signals at all, like prior to this moment, versus not kind of setting up a structure and just accepting like, okay, let's just, work from here.
Because I think it is valuable to know not only is Kathy in our CRM, but we're also seeing recent activity. Like, that's still valuable, even if it's not research activity. And
I don't know. I'm kind of struggling with the idea now too of when are they audience and not researcher? Like almost the moment that we can identify them, to me, it's like a research motion because they've done something in a way that we're able to
No. Let's come back to the statements, to the identifying statements that each stage makes. What is the statement that audience stage makes?
I don't know.
I am learning.
I am learning.
Right?
So if
I like a post, which HubSpot now tells us, we have an ability to treat that as a signal. And I just like a post.
Okay, what's researcher? I am researching?
Yes. See how beautiful this is? Like, I am researching.
Yeah.
Which means I have intent. Like, if you got to dig in a little bit, I have intent.
See, to me, the liking of this is where if I'm splitting hairs, let me know. And this is like just a me thing. I don't interact with anything anywhere unless I'm like researching. Like I'm in the audience of a million things that things will never know that I'm in the audience for, because I will not do anything that is giving away any information. Or if I'm liking something, that means I'm okay with them. Like I am actually like researching it because I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm thinking more critically about it. So that like, this is where it could just be a me thing, but like the minute someone does something like that, it almost reveals I am researching more so than I am learning, because they probably are learning well before they perform any action.
Really, sometimes.
Yeah, like imagine them all like the signal is hand raise of some sort, and like I guarantee you have interacted with posts where it was just, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that before right now. I don't know if I have any problems or like anything actual intentional, but that's cool to know.
Or like,
right?
So Rob Jones
I
makes
read those and just don't
you don't like
I just think that in my head. I'm like, oh, that's cool to know. Like,
but you don't like any of Rob Jones's funny videos?
Sometimes.
But
I don't. This just goes into how I think this is just how I use social media, which might be rare or it might be common, which is just like, or any platform. Like I sit there and I absorb it and enjoy it and do not interact with it in any regard.
Right. But the sometimes is good enough, right? It's a signal that this person is
sometimes
in the audience.
For me means I am research. Like, oh, okay. Like it is kind of that clear differentiator.
Right.
Like if I interact with it, I'm most definitely further along than just in the like I am learning.
But if it's sometimes, then we cannot assume. Like we're not going to assume.
Right.
That's, I think, a difference between traditional scoring is that we will always assume in the other direction, right? Like until there's clear signal that it actually is research for this person because they've identified somewhere else. This is where like AI is powerful enough to say
this
that
is helpful because
Riley-
now I'm really thinking about the difference between like researching and
Right.
learning, which is like consistent effort over time is research. Like if I'm doing a research project, I am learning every day on a certain topic, where if I am just in general learning, I'm picking up things all the time, but I might not be going back into that zone and learning about it. So to me, that helps. We can define learning as some type of kind of interaction, and then the thing that switches it to researching in my brain is identifying some consistent frequency of interactions over time, whether it's over a week, over a month, over whatever, of like, okay, they're periodically doing things that we can determine they are like actively spending calories in this direction over a long period of time.
And this is how buyer intent, it's the true intent of buyer intent, right? It's like, oh, they mentioned this, and then they did this search, and then they visited your website. And it's like, it could be as simple as, I think HubSpot allows for this now, to where Riley liked this thing, and then he made a post about the specific topic, which is problem focused.
Mm-hmm.
And then we like that, right? Can we connect those two dots to say there's intent? Like he is researching, right?
So my social interaction types are comment, mention, share, direct message, visit, submission.
No like, right?
Like. No like.
Yet.
Yeah.
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 I mean, those weren't there a month ago.
Right.
I mean, I feel like a comment is audience
Yeah.
still.
It's certainly, well, that's right. Like, so select comment. I mean, clearly it depends on the who, because Riley's not touching that with a 10-foot pole unless he's researching a specific problem.
Yeah. Or
But
again,
I
this is
the
where
comment.
context matters too.
I'm gonna start anytime.
Am I just responding with a quippy joke, in which because I saw the opportunity to do so?
Anytime I see a comment from Riley on LinkedIn right now, I'm gonna tag all the sales reps at that company. And say,
Like,
Hand raiser
this
alert.
is a hand raise from hell right now. Yeah. If it's not a quippy joke, then you probably could and should.
You can.
Then it was me just trying to say something funny to get dopamine hits from people laughing at my joke. Like,
Yeah. Audience.
yeah.
Okay. So
I mean, is any of
let's
this
just run with.
Well, this is also interesting to me because in this, I mean, I haven't really seen this. Is this an at mention or just like a social listening mention? Like, do they have to kind of hard at mention?
I'm sure. I think so.
Let's pick the first three. Or honestly, it should be like the four. I want to get to like, how are we even bringing this in, like, to the CRM, right?
Because like direct message, like at first I was like, okay, well, direct message might be a researcher, but it's probably not. It's probably somebody trying to sell you something.
Well, this is in the world where like rational human beings are using direct messages appropriately.
Well, but that's not the world we live. That's not the world.
Yeah,
Schools gonna exist in. Chris, you're gonna.
Right. So that's a negative. Like, isn't there ways to say like not ICP or not contact or company fit? Right. So negative score.
So I was gonna say, so for this score, I'm building specifically an engagement score. I'm not building a combined score, and I'm not building a fit score. In my opinion, fit scores are for.
Fit scores overlay all of this, where it's
Fit
like,
scores overlay this to say whether or not the person who is engaging is actually like in your target market, or are they like something
Yeah.
else?
And to me, fit scores are like the throttle for like deploying resources on. So like if your fit score is at a 10 out of 10 and someone's engagement score is at like a 2 out of 10, you can still deploy resources there because of how well of a fit they are. In theory, you've built your fit score knowing we knock these people out of the park over and over and over. So the minute they start to do anything, you're like, oh, great, let's deploy resources in that direction. Whereas if their fit score is like a 1 or a 2, I would argue it doesn't necessarily mean that they are a bad fit. It's just that you haven't identified if they are a good fit. And so you should just require a little higher engagement score before you deploy resources to those people. You shouldn't let it be undeployable. Like if they get a 10 out of 10, you shouldn't like not let them do anything or have nobody talk to them, but it's just make it a little more difficult to spend credits on them, spend human time on them, etc.
Yeah, I'm liking this as a way to keep it unbiased because engagement in general
Mhm.
can speak to so many things.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, it's the ultimate reveal. Like if someone's fit doesn't really reveal much. It just reveals like if you start to have a conversation with them and all other things are correct, how might that conversation go? The engagement is kind of trying to build that all other things are correct component. Like, and again, the whole fit thing is like totally dependent upon the data repository that you're using.
Mhm.
Well, to your point, I think it goes both ways in terms of engagement. Like the fit can tell you like, is this actually an addressable market? Like, do we even have enough people
Right.
like,
Yeah.
identified, right? And then engagement, are we present in those places? It still might be just, Riley cracking a joke,
Mhm.
but the fact that we were there for Riley to crack a joke like means something,
Mhm.
right? As opposed to not being in the places and not getting engagement,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. So we looked at audience, we're looking at social interactions. Circling back to Kathy, I happen to know Kathy joined my lead scoring mastermind's demo session. That to me feels like that's a researcher at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Multiple revelations of like interested in a certain topic.
But that's looking like that's what, okay, so that one's form submission. Form. This is so annoying.
So just to bring in some garbage to this, is Kathy created at audience and immediately moves to researcher here? Or is she like if we're looking at any reporting or anything like that, like does she kind of
Yes.
go through that in that regard? Okay.
Like,
Then yeah, to me, audience is just like everyone, if you do anything trackable that we can identify you and put you into the CRM, like boom, you're an audience. And
I mean,
like-
we can get like a page visit probably in here too. I know you social is what you're looking at, but
yeah, I mean,
yeah, there's
any
lots
form
of other stuff.
submission, any event attendee import, like this doesn't just have to be trackable online sources. This can include offline
Right.
sources to a certain degree as well.
I mean, like
to
the
me,
way I've described it, right? Total addressable market, 95% is in our 95% of understanding because we have not experienced any level of engagement or anything from them. So the best we can say is that they're in the 95%. Traditionally, if you trusted the source, and maybe back in the day, like you could trust these sources. If you knew your total addressable market had 1,000 people in it, and you could have perfect information, all those 1,000 people should start in your CRM And you don't need to wait for them to do anything before they get put in your CRM. They come in as audience, right? But more often than not, we only know about 200 of them. And if we don't, and the rest of them come in at researcher or handraiser, like that's when they come in. Like we did not track, like we did not know them when they were in the audience stage, right?
Yeah, I would say something unique for B2B here is that if you're using the buyer intent, research intent component of HubSpot, like that's a really great way to identify the company is in the audience stage, but you have no identifiable contacts at that point. Kind of move them into the researcher phase, because it's like, hey, we just know through anonymized tracking that these people are doing something with us or looking at terms that we know we can help solve. So like, boom, someone there's in the audience. We just don't know who.
Right. So much of this is just trying to objectively measure intent, right? Without biasing it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one thing I'm still a little like, I mean, it's hard to figure out what's a research behavior. So
I agree, because at some point you have to draw a line somewhere and indicate anything over this is research, anything under this is audience.
Right.
And like,
I mean, it's probably the widest stage. Right. Because I'd say like until we have tons of data to work with, until AI is deciding this for us, all we can do is like, okay, she joined the value first scoring mastermind. I can't imagine, somebody not having some like research intent there, that they're dealing with scoring as a problem and they're trying to do it better. It's like beyond learning. I do think there's a case to say, oh, maybe they're still just learning.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right. But that's where you start to get into the nitty gritty of data and understanding, like, okay, the last 1,000 people that signed up for the mastermind, like what happened next? Like, do we know? You start to like use context to clarify, right? When all we have is demographics and a couple of data points of, page and form fill, like you got to make some hypothesis to start to understand like what it means for your business.
Are there page views that fall in the researcher?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and now most people suck at this. So I'll just say that. But you can define, like you can build websites out where it's like the only way in hell they got to that page is if they took a journey. And that journey, the only way they took that journey is if they're very close to buying or they might be buying. So that, let's say we define that journey and they get to a specific product or demo page where they only could have gotten there as if they would have engaged in some content. Maybe it's a CTA at the end of a video, right? It's all these different ways we spin up ads, and like you can do really targeted things where it's like we've done the work to define like.
Right. So not like a generic pricing page that is in the header form, but like a kind of could even be an exact replicate, but just tagged differently so that you're able to determine, okay, this person, even if they were using, the craziest session stripping data, because like to me, a part of it is also is like time on page, things like that, where it's like, okay, let's assume that it's not just them clicking, going to the pricing page and then deleting, like running away.
Right.
But
so then like we design
that along with, okay, they must have spent at least 5 minutes reading this content in order to click on this link that would take them to this page.
Right. Like a lot of the assessment tools we talk about, like a lot of
Mhm.
Oaks is like Joshua Oaks and what we're going to be talking about in the value path with Who First, right, is giving people an opportunity to very clearly say, like, I'm doing research. You gave me the opportunity to raise my hand at the end. I did not.
Yeah.
So I'm very clearly in
And not.
research mode,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I did not ask for any further help beyond this assessment that you just offered, right?
Mhm.
So I think in that's where again we get to the strategy is the hard part, but you can definitely design complete digital experiences across social ads, Google, and your website so that you know like what must have transpired on the way there.
Mm-hmm.
So most businesses still just have like a contact page where unless like maximally they're giving you a drop down to say what are you interested in, right? But you have no idea how they got there. So I think everything we're used to scoring on is still in play. It's just, is it a part of a meaningful journey that you designed, or is it just throwing it out there to try and build scores so people can call people? Huge difference.
Yeah, I keep thinking about all of the like supporting infrastructure that would be optimal for this. Like it to me, it's not merely renaming your life cycle stages. Like that'll do some of it, but
This what's happening on the screen like right now is a part of that infrastructure required.
yeah.
Right? What
But then it's
what we
also
haven't gotten to yet is the
yeah.
fact that HubSpot needs to know about your social accounts
Mm-hmm.
so that it can be watching for these things.
Mhm.
And is that like a different marketing group that might be a social media manager that doesn't give a shit about any of this stuff
Mhm.
and is just supposed to be doing it for the brand? And sales and all these other people are not paying any attention to that, even though there's people giving really clear signals, right? Like that's
Mhm.
the kind of stuff that needs to like shift to support. And that I don't think you ever get like you never ask the social media person to come over to talk to RevOps unless you take this high level like, okay, we're not relying on lead gen, like this whole concept of brand versus performance marketing, right? It should not be as separate as it is because
Mm-hmm.
I want to engage with the brand I like. And the moment that there's engagement, just because it wasn't intended to be performance marketing or it didn't take me to a landing page that then gets tracked and notifies everybody, I'm still signaling you in some way. And if you're not taking action, like it's a waste.
Yeah, I think I mean, we'll keep digging because I think next week, wanting to kind of talk about what that infrastructure looks like. Um, because if you don't have, especially for the researcher stage, actually, the more I'm like building this out, the more I'm realizing like you need infrastructure to identify the researcher stage. You
Mm-hmm.
know, since you were like here, I just said they visited the pricing page at least 2 times in the last 7 days because I know there is not like a dedicated pricing page that you can only get to. You know, we don't have that. So what's like the workaround? Maybe it's this instead. We don't have demo videos. I just found some random ones, but like what are those researcher things and do you have them? I think that's twofold. Do you have the researcher things? And then, like you were saying, are you giving your researchers a chance to raise their hands?
Yep.
That's kind of what
It
happens.
gives signals that they're in research mode. And I think if you want things like the Pathfinder in customer journey analytics and the journey mapping tool to work like truthfully and not just tell you a made up story based on the data that you do have, you need to know that there are or are not gaps in the journeys that people are likely taking, right? I would love to see, I don't know how we would pull this off, but like the difference between a traditional like data set where it's just emails and websites and form fills versus one that can include like buyer intent, research intent, Reddit, social media activity, like sales conversational mentions. Like, and I say sales conversation, like all the moments that happen where like somebody's name gets mentioned, maybe this is like a referral situations, right? That it's so easy to lose track of that stuff. And often we only track it as if it comes right in as like a deal. Like, and we're just gonna, oh yeah, this person said this person's ready. So we're gonna just bypass all this other stuff. Right? There's so much in the unstructured data that if we give AI the opportunity to understand it better, it'll activate a lot of this stuff to tell us the whole story, right? And avoid all these situations like, yeah, marketing says this attribution. I just talked to the person yesterday. Like I figured out their one objection, we got over it, and now there's a deal, right? So don't tell me for a second that marketing, was involved in this, because this person was not buying until I clarified everything on this call and I got that sale, right?
All right, so we have a first pass. Now we just need the infrastructure to keep going. And I think infrastructure is both having the content, but also training your team on how to like communicate that. Because I think there is another piece of this that's like, not all of this is trackable in HubSpot for a lot of reasons. Some of those might get solved by HubSpot at some point, but some of them likely won't, because there's just like, like we were talking about DMs, whether a DM is a researcher DM or a hand raiser DM, it's going to be hard for HubSpot to ever be able to figure that out potentially. So that you are going to have to rely on your team as well.
Your team in that context includes AI.
Yes, I thought you might say that. As the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, Kristen's going to say, but AI.
Right. Your team needs to tell AI that what was said in that direct message, the words that were used, like signal something, right?
All right. Until next week.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see ya.
Good job.